Dumbing Down, Track 5. Divine order is simply taking orders from divinity. There are some things that God has joined together, and anybody who puts them asunder does so to his great peril. To fly in the face of clear commands of Scripture is foolhardy indeed. The consequences of doing so are serious, to say the least. God personally joined the first man and woman in marriage. He has also joined some other things. The Word and the Spirit, the law and the prophets, the head and the body, have all been put together. A headless body has no intelligence and without direction. The Word without the life of the Spirit is illegal and dead. The Spirit without the Word is certainly not the Spirit of God, but another spirit. Whether it's human or satanic doesn't really matter. One is just as capable of destroying you as the other. 1 Thessalonians 5:12. And we beseech you, brethren, to know them which labour among you. We have religion today on tap via television. You can turn on your TV set any time of the day or night, and in a matter of minutes see someone telling you how to get your life in order, for a financial consideration, of course. Programs featuring American evangelists can now be seen in most parts of the world. These people have an insatiable need to promote themselves, driven by colossal egos, addicted to their own self-importance, aided by more nerve than a herd of stampeding buffalo. They promote themselves shamelessly. Believing they are an asset to the cause of Christianity, they invade the more affluent nations with their tried and proven methods for siphoning off money to extend their influence and do their thing. Like the stars of secular television, the female ministers are now marketing diet and weight reduction programs alongside their sermons. We have bizarre writings from the fertile imaginations of prophetic preachers passed off as inspired by God, and a proliferation of prophets giving us their doom and gloom prophecies, predicting events, locations and dates that have long passed in regard to the destruction of California, the great earthquake in Mammoth Lakes, to name just two. You start to realize that another spirit is motivating these people. It can't be God, because unlike men, he doesn't make mistakes. The dividing line between speculation and prophecy, a shot in the dark and a word of knowledge, inspiration and speculation, faith and presumption, is a very fine one indeed. That's why we are told to judge the spirits whether they are of God or not. I have found that the purer the heart, the truer the gift. The motivation of the prophet is a key ingredient. Nevertheless, a well-intentioned human spirit is quite capable of spouting rubbish. Some of these people are undoubtedly trying to establish credibility and notoriety via outlandish predictions. I have lost count of the number of times we've had to sit and listen to the most pathetic verbal nonsense passed off as prophecy, only to have the pastor give it his approval. The people think that if the pastor okays it, then it must be of God. Some of these false prophecies have come from very high-profile people. But don't be swayed by reputations. Judge what they say, especially when they add, "Thus saith the Lord." Many of the pioneer prophets are making the quantum leap and becoming apostles and bishops so they can keep one jump ahead of their disciples. The wife of a well-known author and publisher of dubious visions dressed up as the character Dorothy from the show The Wizard of Oz. She then waltzed into the Sunday morning service and sang "Somewhere Over the Rainbow" as she held out a pair of little red shoes. The congregation was told that there was a message for the church in the story, The Wizard of Oz. Jim Jones and the Temple of Doom. In November 1978, the largest mass suicide in history took place in the jungles of Guyana. 26 years later, all that remains of the madness of Jonestown are the memories. In the early 50s, Jones was singled out at a ministers' conference in Detroit, where he received a prophetic rebuke, stating that if he did not turn from the direction he was heading, he would die a violent death and take many people with him. In early 1956, Jones founded his People's Temple in Indianapolis. His goal was simple. His church was guided by the principles of racial equality and harmony, principles that could get a person killed in America in the 50s. Within 12 months he had attracted a strong following, and with more than half of his congregation comprising African Americans. In 1965 he uprooted the church and moved to California with more than 400 people. He soon achieved immense success, being visited by powerful political figures. Eventually Jones became dissatisfied with the US, calling the land of his birth the fascist state of America. In late 1976 he reached an agreement with the Guyanan government allowing for the settlement of his church in a small Central American country. In 1977 Jones and nearly 1,000 of his followers moved to Guyana. Gradually his behaviour became more and more bizarre. Jones, screaming into loudspeakers around the compound, would waken the members before dawn. The drills had the desired effect. The residents soon feared everyone outside of Jonestown. Reported threats of mass suicide led Congressman Leo Ryan from California to go and see if he could help. Accompanied by several journalists and People's Temple defectors, he flew to Jonestown. Afterwards, he and his party were preparing to leave Jonestown. Gunmen from the People's Temple killed them. Within hours, Jones gathered his congregation for one last communion in the pavilion. Members were instructed to drink poison. A toxic mixture of Kool-Aid and cyanide was given to adults. Members injected their children with the poison. In a few hours, 913 were dead, including 276 children. Jones was found with a bullet in his head. Jonestown was an extreme case for sure, but similar scenes have been repeated at Waco, Texas. God has not given us the spirit of fear, but of love and of power and a sound mind. And that mind needs to be used and exercised so that we do not get led astray. Don't make me think it hurts. What a strange attitude. No, it's more than that. It's stupid. Yet how often we hear people say, I don't want to think about that right now, or I'm not prepared to discuss it. Like the ostrich, many have just stuck their heads in the sand and won't entertain any thoughts that are painful because they challenge their position. In the film The Dead Poets Society, the English teacher John Keating, played by Robin Williams, dramatically tells his students, Carpe diem, seize the day. Every one of you will die, he warns. The critical question is, will you wait too long before you begin to live the truth? Be sure the life you came to live does not remain unlived. Mark Twain had no respect for people who only knew how to spell a word one way. In other words, take a risk now and again with God and His Word. Just because you begin to question things doesn't mean you're a rebel. It may mean that at last you've begun to think about some things for yourself that you've been taught by institutionalized religion. To think or not to think, that's the question. To muse means to think. David the psalmist said, When I mused, the fire burned, then spake I with my mouth. Again in Luke 3:15, the people mused, wondering if John the Baptist was the Christ. To amuse means not to think or don't think. To be amused is to be entertained. It's a form of relaxation where someone else does your thinking for you. While it's true that God has given us all things richly to enjoy, including the arts and music, the church isn't a theatre or an entertainment centre, but a house of worship and prayer, where our minds can be informed by Scripture, our hearts touched by the Spirit, and our wills challenged. The great God of entertainment has taken hold of the minds of retarded saints of our day, and life is intolerable without some form of entertainment. Every age has its unique temptations that barricade the way to Christians fulfilling their full potential. Today's no different. For many, sound doctrine is too uncomfortable to endure. Besides, we know what we like and what makes us feel good, and we don't want anything else. Thank you very much. The end of track 5.